Welcome to Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno.
Can you actually meet an older version of yourself in waking life? How real are dreams? Can angels die?
Hello and welcome to the 853rd edition of Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno. I'm Ben, and those varied questions came from my co-host, partner in paranormal adventures, and dad, Paul. I want to change dad to pal so we can get more alliteration in there, but I'll work that in unbeknownst to you. So today we bring you an open line show to answer your questions on so many paranormal subjects, and we welcome your calls today. The number is 401-766-1240. That's from anywhere, or email Paul at behindtheparanormal.com, or you can contact us via Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram.
And we welcome back our favorite guest co-host to help us do all that, Shane Sirois.
Hey, everybody. I hope everyone's doing well in this crazy world we're living in right now.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, huh?
All right, so let's get right to it. Now, wouldn't you know, and then this is unusual for me, I'm usually very careful about this, but I left in my desk at home the questions that came in most recently from Facebook, because a lot of questions come in over Facebook. However, I do have Facebook on my phone, and I can go back to a few of these things. So let's very appropriately begin with questions from our dear listener in Bogota, Colombia, Peter. And Peter's first, I'll give this over to Ben in a minute, but his first question is, any follow-up to the San Anselmo UFO case from your June 14th show? Several people wrote in about that, and we hope to have our show reporter, Rick from California, calling in with perhaps the witness to this to add some further depth to the plot here, because other things are happening. So, Ben, if you could, in the meantime, let's go to number 2, seeing the balloon in the middle there.
Sure thing.
Question from Peter.
Okie dokie. So, Peter also writes to us, hooded entities turned up in various cases. Has anyone seen what is under their hood that they don't want to reveal?
Shane, you want to start off on that one?
Hooded entities. Has anyone seen what's underneath? I have not ran into that on any of my cases. I have run into the hooded entity several times, where my, the people I've helped had. I've seen maybe a couple times what appeared to be like a hooded entity. Never saw what was underneath. I am aware of one popular case where that did happen. They made a little show about it. I think it appeared in a couple shows, but where the family was being tormented by this hooded entity. They'd see it in the hallway, standing in the doorway, and then I think eventually they end up seeing a face. But that's the only case I'm aware of. And I've dealt with a lot of cases, but never, other than that one show.
Well, it's funny this comes up because just yesterday I was participating in the just as an attendee to the Consciousness and Contact summit online via Zoom, organized by our good friend and sometime co-host Kathy Marden, and also Denise Stoner, who was a well-known guest on the show. And there were several. There was a 5-hour event with 35 people participating about, and there were a number of things that were discussed that included hooded grays. And at one point, there was an illustration shown from a witness who had awakened and seen this hooded figure by her bed, and she could see the usual gray alien type of face underneath the hood. That said, I have to kind of agree with you, Shane. There have been some hooded entities. I'm thinking, Ben, of the clerics, whom we've run into in some cases. They often will be hooded. Sometimes they will wear. I have seen they sometimes will wear masks over their faces. There's a photograph of this, but they do that when they pray. That's what we seem to have found. So there may be nothing, or there may be something interesting under these hoods. But those are the only occasions that I'm aware of where things have been revealed, so to speak. Hooded entities, in my experience, are not that common. Very often they're just it may look like a hood because you're looking through the veil of the plasma or
That was a good play
whatever.
on words.
You know, what's that?
That was a very good play on words you had there.
Oh, thank you. You have to explain it to me later.
Yeah.
So anyway, I don't know if there's anything else to be said on that, but we have a third question.
I wrote it down.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah. So
Can I add to that too? I was thinking more on the paranormal realm, even though it's all kind of linked, But I did have run-ins as a child with two small gray, and then one tall one that wore a purple cloak with a hood, and I could see its face.
Okay.
I was thinking more on the other end, but it's all kind of linked anyway.
So it depends on the case, and it may vary. So that's the thing. And okay, and we have a third question from Peter here, and Ben's on the phone with our first caller here, but I'll just do this very quickly. How did your show get on CBS, and why did it stop there? Well, in 2009, about the same time we came on this station, we'd already been on the air for a year out of a Phoenix-based internet station. And CBS had started a branch called the Sky Network, or
I believe it was called New Sky Radio.
New Sky Radio, right? New Sky Radio, and it was meant to concentrate a lot of the paranormal shows and psychic shows and all this stuff in one part of the network.
Well, a lot of it was HD radio. That was the big thing, which is highly impractical because it sounds good in a certain area and a certain radius, but then once you get out of that zone, it's just complete static. So it just didn't make sense. So it was only around for a few years, and it didn't really take off. It was meant to sort of. It just didn't take off.
Well, they paid us pretty well. So I'm not going to gripe, but there were two anchor shows, as I understand it. There was us. It was also Behind the Paranormal, although it was a different edition from what we were doing here. And there was the Para X show with the Jones Brothers.
Yes,
and,
right after us.
Yeah, and we actually did a couple of joint shows with them on the Rendlesham case. It was very interesting. So it was fun while it lasted. It was only in 4 cities. It was Boston, 2 stations in Pittsburgh, Seattle, and Detroit. So we can say for a couple of years we came blasting off the Prudential Tower in Boston at 50,000 watts. Anyway, on Sundays. Anyway, so it was cool while it lasted. But it did earn us a humongous audience that has followed us, apparently, to our show here. And even though this is a little station in northern Rhode Island, we have a humongous global listenership.
And thank you all for sticking with us.
Thank you all. And thank you also for those who are listening on the Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live, and also on TuneIn.com, because we have a big listenership there. Anyway, who do we have on the phone, Ben?
Well, it's our show reporter.
Oh, Rick Eno. Rick Eno, who is a relative, and
we
important part of the firm here. Yes, we can finally reveal. So, Rick, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Ben. It's good to hear your voices.
Yeah, and you're here to answer our Peter's first question about what's an update on the San Anselmo case.
Okay, well, first let me say that also on the line with me is Andrew. He is the actual witness in the case, and I'm going to have him update you from his aspect. So
excellent.
We have that piece. And then I'll give you what's been going forward so far since the report on my end. So the case I'm talking about is the drone case, I'm calling it. Back from 2019.
Okay, just could you just slow down a little and speak directly into the phone?
Oh, you know what? Hang on. Let me fix that.
Yeah.
Hang on.
Okay.
Please wait.
Please wait.
Is this better?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay, good. All right. So I'm just going to update you from what happened since I reported on the August 2019 drone case that we saw. Just to recap, it was seen in 3 different counties throughout the day. And during that time, the physical description matched. So there was in Butte County, Siskiyou, and then down in Marin over San Anselmo, which is Andrew who's on the phone. When I did the research that I could to identify that case, it didn't have an explanation, so it went down as a UFO. What a missing link was, and we're trying to catch right now, is that one of the witnesses who reported it to New Fork had a drawing, and we wanted to get our hands on that drawing to match it to see what Andrew had and the other case had in terms of pictures and video. We haven't been able to get that from New Fork yet. We're still working on it. So that's where that piece stands. But if we do get that piece and the vehicles are similar, we have something more to go on. So that's the update on that case. I can tell you one other thing. In that corridor that we talked about, that's that corridor going from San Anselmo and Marin County up through Mount Shasta and so forth, where there's a lot of military bases. There have been a lot of sightings, a lot of reported sightings of group observations of objects. So they're seeing things in 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 small groups flying erratically. And then there's also reports of orbs. So we're continuing to focus on that area, and it's really fascinating in terms of what we've got so far. And when I call in again, I'll have a more updated scope of what's happening with those other cases, because I want to do them justice.
Yes, okay.
In the meantime.
Very good, Rick. And Andrew, okay, well, thank you both. We'll plan on having you on soon, and please stay in touch with each other, as I'm sure you will, and keep Rick informed, and he'll feed info to us, and we'll get it done.
Absolutely. Andrew has had some other experiences that we'll be reporting on.
Okay, yeah.
Like it may be time today, but if Andrew, does he have time to talk?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Andrew, why don't you go ahead and tell him what's happened?
Sure. Well, since the sighting on June 9th with the sphere over my house and sort of the rod of energy, I didn't understand what it was at the time, but sort of demised that it was more of a rod of energy. I put some trail cams on my roof, and I've been capturing some pretty compelling evidence. Quite a lot of spheres, Tic Tacs flying over the top, an L-shaped craft, and also a long gold object with sort of stepped platforms, and they have blue panels underneath. And it could be mistaken as something unusual, but there is another craft that's flying above it, much higher on the same heading and looking exactly the same. So, and a lot of these are only captured in infrared. When you review the footage, the video footage, nothing appears, but the actual single photo in infrared, they only appear there. So, and then I've also captured a swarm of about 8 to 12 craft in a 10-second capture, and I've also experienced an object flying over power lines when I was playing golf last Sunday, and when I pointed it out to somebody, it actually started to move down away from the power lines and then drop down behind the hill. This was in Nevada, and it's just all of a sudden I'm seeing objects and things that I've never actually experienced before. So it's a little unnerving, and I'm trying to figure out what's going on, but it's fascinating all the same.
Shane, do you have any comments or questions here?
Other than Mount Shasta area, I heard that brought up, very strange area. I've been researching that for a while. A lot of strange missing, people disappearing with no logical explanation out that way. But just all in all, like, I'm getting a lot of reports from people all around the United States that are seeing a lot more activity in the sky, a lot more of these orbs, a lot more of these discs just appearing in clusters. And actually, I was just sent one yesterday, a video right here in my town, similar to what I had witnessed, where these 3 just appeared and they were moving around, and the people, of course, were freaking out. And but definitely out that way, that Mount Shasta area is just, we need to go out there, and there's a lot happening over there.
Yeah. Ben, any thoughts here?
No.
Okay.
I've been I don't know, I've been taking it all in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, that tone that we played that resulted in us having a tone played back to us from some unseen thing. That tone was recorded from Mount Shasta, actually, the one that we played.
Yeah, that's referring to the Pennsylvania events
Yes.
of a year ago, a little over a year ago, May. Okay, very good. All right, fellas, we will look forward to hearing from you again soon, and stay in touch, and we'll get you back on when we have more to report.
Okay. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you, Andrew. Okay, we also have a report from Donna in Connecticut, our show reporter who lives literally at the heart of the Litchfield Triangle. She may be calling in during the second half hour. But I couldn't wait to read this. This is really interesting. This is from Donna. Had an odd experience last week when I saw, my grandson in the field down across the brook. Now, let me explain who the grandson is. He's 14 now, but he was 4 years old when we started this case. And there's a video on the Facebook page of our show, Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno. And the first video there that's available is the video we took after this young man, then 4 years old, told us that his invisible friend Ashwar was in the tree outside the house. Now, we'd been filming a pilot with a New York film crew that day, and it was dark and really, really cold, November of 2010. And we went out, and Ben and I just sort of pointed our infrared camera up into the tree, and we got this very, very strange tadpole-like thing coming down out of the tree and then disappearing. Was that Ashwar? I don't know. But this is the young man, and he's a very remarkable young man. I saw him last year when I was visiting his home, which is separate from Donna's home. And very, very amazing young man, all kinds of amazing paranormal experiences he's had really all his life. So anyway, Donna writes that she saw him down in the field across the brook on their property. And Donna continues, same clothes. He wears these smiley-faced PJ bottoms and a black T-shirt. Was kind of just sliding along toward the brook with his head looking down, moving slowly. Then I realized he wasn't visiting us that day. He turned slowly and just glided out of sight. Seems just a sort of a seemingly innocuous sort of event here, but I would look forward to her calling and maybe saying more about this. But apparently a site of perhaps a multiversal event. Many of these things involve bilocation, seeming bilocation. We get lots of reports from listeners that come in and say that they walked into their kitchen, for example, and there they were sitting in front of themselves, like in the island in the middle of the kitchen or at a desk or something. This sort of thing. The doppelganger phenomenon, as it's been known in literature. So I want to go to Shane on this in a minute, but just to finish what Donna has written in, quote, I am doing more of the EVPs, electronic voice phenomena, since I offloaded about 2 years' worth and gave it a rest. This is in her house, which is at the center of this triangle. They were slow at first, but now coming back into full steam. Got proof of a fire death. Last name, town, and cause of fire. Found out we knew them, and I asked what the cause of the fire was, and he said cooking on the stove. His widow posted a couple of months revealing what happened on the night of the fire, and she said he fell asleep while cooking on the stove. One of their twin daughters died with him, and she got the other one out. I had no details of them really, just relatives of someone I know. Never knew they had lived, where they had lived or their last name. So anyway, we are doing well. Well, that's not your usual message, but I mean, who knows what's behind these sorts of things, but that's typical of that area. Shane, any comments on this?
Yeah, like you said, typical for that area, but yeah, I mean, Donna and Bob have seen so many different things on this property. Could be from any time, any place and time, and the one with the apparition that appeared to be Dale in the backyard, that was really interesting, especially where she said it seemed to be just gliding across the the ground or floating almost, and but very she's seen aliens in the house, sharing the same space as her vanity, standing within it.
Yeah.
So there's just no shortage of the strangeness that's going on.
Yeah, we have photographs of some of this stuff.
Oh, sure, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So okay, Shane, now you have a question from a listener who sent it to you, and a very interesting hooded figure here. Yeah, go for it. If we run into the break, we'll just take a break and go back to the question. All
right, so it's from our listener, Rick, over there in Illinois, I believe, at Chicago area, I believe. And he's you've communicated with him as well. But he says, it's kind of long, but I'll go as fast as I can. Hey man, hope all is well with you and your family during this crazy time of having a bit of a problem, and I am not sure who to talk to about other than you and the two Enos. I have PTSD, not from military service, and I have an entire toolbox of things I do to help me battle against it. Meditation was a huge part of my arsenal. A few years ago, I had a couple experiences that have scared me out of meditation. I can't concentrate, and I just have a general fear of doing it altogether. I was lying in bed one day, getting deep into a meditation. I would say it was probably the deepest I've ever gotten. All of a sudden, it felt like I had dropped out of my body. I was lying on my bed, and it literally felt like I fell out of my body through the bed and landed on the floor underneath my bed. I felt an actual impact as I hit the floor, like my teeth clicked together and everything. I remember thinking in my head, oh my gosh, you messed up. Now you're out of your body and you can't get back in. Why do you have to screw around with things like this? I remember reaching up, trying to see if I could pull myself back in or something, and eventually I opened my eyes and I was starting at my ceiling back in my body. I have no idea if this was a real thing that happened to me or not, but it was real enough to scare me. The other incident was around the same time, possibly within a few weeks of each other. I was sitting up in bed, this time kind of in a lotus position. I was getting pretty deep into a meditation again when all of a sudden the vague image of a face just intruded into my mind's eye. It wasn't my own thought at all. I couldn't make out any details of the face except for I got the feeling it was female. It was as if someone pressed their face against a piece of cloth and you can just get a vague blurry image of a face. It shocked me right out of my meditation and I almost fell backwards in bed. Ever since those two experiences, I've been afraid to meditate again. The few times I've tried, I haven't been able to do it. I know that you dabble in shamanism, and to me that sounds like a possible shamanic experience. My question is, why would this be happening to me? I'm an Italian guy who lives in Chicago. This stuff doesn't run in my family, and I have no ancestries, a family history of this whatsoever. My mother has had a similar experience when she was a teenager, where she felt like she floated to the ceiling or her bedroom, and she could actually feel the cold drywall of the ceiling against her cheek. I would really like to get back to being able to find peace within meditation again. I'm quite open to these experiences, but I would just like to dip my toe in first before I go diving in. Do you have any advice for me going forward? Any mental exercises that you may do when this stuff occurs? Also, I do not mind you using my name or sharing the story with Mr. Eno on his radio show either. Also, any possible literature on shamanism or shamanic journey that I could maybe read would be incredibly helpful as well. I really don't know what to make of all of this, and I really don't know if these experiences I had were even real or if it was just my mind playing tricks on me while I was in an altered state of consciousness. Thank you in advance, sir. So this was Rick Hermes from Chicago. And there's more to it, but I guess we could start there.
Sure. Okay. Well, why do you go ahead, Shane? I mean, he sent the question to you. You know about this stuff too.
Yeah. So I was going to get back to him, and I wanted to give it more time to kind of go over, because he sent me some more stuff that I've been remodeling my home, so I haven't really had a time to really give it a good thought, but I actually asked him, was he going through anything troubling at the time in his life? And yes, indeed, he was. So that's where I wanted to start there, because that obviously our emotional state of being plays into a lot of this stuff. It plays into what we attract towards us, like the parasites and in our energy level and what we align with frequency wise and all that. So I got the emails back from that. He says I definitely was under a lot of stress at the time, definitely lots of personal turbulence. He was meditating to help elevate himself to help, with the stuff he was going through. And then he emailed a lot more, but definitely I think that played a lot into what happened. I don't think necessarily it was a shamanic, experience per se. Shamans enter into those states as well, but I don't think that really had anything to do with that. But I think more so where he was emotionally played into what his experiences were, and the whole floating, feeling the cold. I've done that when I was ill. I had a childhood illness, and I ended up doing the same thing. Like I couldn't see anything; it was all white, and I could feel coldness on me and staring at myself. And that's happened a few times in my life. I do understand that, but yeah, definitely really big in that meditation. Really looking forward to your answer on that.
Oh, okay. Well, before we do that, we're going to take our break. At the bottom of the hour here, you're listening to Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno and our special guest co-host Shane Sirois on WOON 1240 AM and 99.5 FM in New England. New England's a really hot Blackstone River Valley today, and we'll be right back. So stick with us.
The night is alive. Join us and take a walk on the weird side when you tune in to The Kingdom of Nye, hosted by Heather Wade, the finest in late night talk. Listen live free weeknights starting at 9 p.m. Pacific Time at thekingdomofnye.com, talkstreamlive.com, and the Paranormal Radio app. Wanna take a ride?
Local and live at 99.5 FM.
And we're back with Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno here on 1240 AM and 99.5 FM WOON Radio in Woonsocket, Rhode Island. And we are having an open line show today with our special guest co-host, Shane Sirois, who just asked a very, very fascinating question and a series of comments from Rick in Illinois. In the meantime, though, we've had a caller from our...
California, right?
What?
You said Illinois.
No. The first Rick was from California. The second Rick is from Illinois.
Oh, there's another.
We're beset with Ricks today.
Ugh,
Yeah.
Okay.
Too many Ricks.
Yeah. All right. Well, there are a lot of worse things you could have too many of. Anyway, Donna, welcome back to the show. Donna is our show reporter from Central Connecticut, right at the heart of on the front lines at the Litchfield Triangle. And Donna, I have to tell you, I couldn't wait to deal with this fascinating material you sent, so I kind of read your your Facebook message. But why don't we extrapolate on that? First of all, how is everyone doing over there?
Oh, we're doing good considering the circumstances.
Really.
With the heat and the masks and everything.
Yep.
But we're doing good so far, hanging in there.
Good. Well, I find it's endlessly fascinating, this sort of apparition of your grandson. Could you relate that again and tell us what you think of it?
Well, I don't know. It's the first time I've seen something like that. We were expecting my daughter and him to come to the house, and they hadn't arrived yet. So I was out in the back porch with the dog, and I happened to look down across the brook into the field, and there I see what appears to be my grandson. And same size. He's got the long curly hair now, and he had he wears these smiley pants. They're very distinctive with the big yellow circles. And the way he was moving was strange. He was coming toward the brook with his back away from me, and he had his head down, and his arms weren't showing any walking movement. You know how you see in these videos, like on YouTube or whatever, where you see something and it's like moving unnaturally, but it looks real.
Yes.
And my first thought was, how did they get here? How did he get down there so fast? And it's like within a split second, your brain's going, well, why is he here? So I looked through one of the windows, and there was no car out there. And I turned around and I watched, and he just very slowly turned and took like 2 steps, and he was just gone. And he didn't go through behind the trees. Those pants would have stuck out and he was gone. And then within 10 minutes they came, and it just kind of shook me because I wasn't sure even what the word is for when you're seeing somebody that is not there but they're there.
Well, it is there, I would say, but perhaps not in the normal manner that we would expect it to be there, you know.
I know.
Perhaps looking across a world boundary to where he really was there, you know. That's our interpretation. Fellas, what, Ben and then Shane?
I think it's super interesting that it was near the brook.
Oh, yeah.
I found that very interesting.
Right.
Because water conducts electricity, and so that's actually a really fascinating sort of detail that really stuck out to me personally. Because at any time that anything sort of happened around, the sort of the farmhouse there, it's always been somewhere where there's sort of a lot of electrical activity. That's always been sort of a thing, that a running theme throughout all of it, which is maybe it's sort of conducting something. That's part of the. It's a very vague sort of thought, but that's sort of where my brain is at right now. Shane, to you?
Yeah, same here. So when I first started, you guys were going there long before I was. But first thing I do on all my cases is I take a look at the land before I get there, based on the input that I get about the case. And one thing that is present on their land is, as well as some of the other very highly active cases that I've done, are all surrounded or have a river or stream nearby. And Donna and Bob's house have 3 distinct bends that point towards the house and bent away. And so and I don't think I've ever talked about this aspect on shows before, but what I've noticed over all these years with these cases that are fueled by these rivers and streams is a restriction in the water flow. So a bend in the stream, or an area where it bottlenecks, or a waterfall. So where there's a restriction or a change in velocity, there seems to be a lot more activity. So that has been, without a doubt, I mean, over all the years I've been doing this, I wrote an article in the late 90s about water and how it pertains to the paranormal and stuff like that, and I've just built on that. But that was one observation that I cannot deny. It's there every single time where there's a highly active house that has, I'm not talking about something weird that happens once a month. I'm talking about constant strangeness like their house and all these other ones. All have rivers or streams, but mostly it's that bend or restriction or a change in velocity of the river that really seems to be the most active homes or properties.
Yeah, no, I
You know what?
No, go ahead, Don.
I was just going to say, Shane, now that you mention waterfall, this is so weird. Right above where our property starts, which isn't too wide down there is a waterfall. There was a pond there, and there was a original cut stone dam, and the water came over. It was enough velocity when it was full that you could actually fish for trout underneath it. And it dropped about 15 feet, and I haven't been there in a while. It's just not that far from where you cross the brook behind our house.
Oh wow, I wasn't aware of that.
Well, one of the things I wanted to ask Donna, I see that you're having a new roof put on. You're having some work done on the house. Has that stirred anything up?
You know what? Actually, it's so weird because for most of the summer, I know, the EVP thing is, subjective with people who believe in it or don't. But it had been very, very quiet all summer. And I kind of fell off and everything. I offloaded about maybe 1,500 EVPs that I had gotten over the last 2 years, just to clear them out and get them off there and save them. And it was very quiet, and I got very few. It was very flat. There was no background noise whatsoever. And then all of a sudden, the roof went up, and we had 5 guys up there, bang, bang. The house was shaking and everything. The very next night, I went on, and I was ready for bed, and I thought, let me throw a couple on here and see what I got. And I got those explosive booms. Now, mind you, the house was dead quiet. It was like midnight. Nobody was up. Nobody was here. There was nothing on. I closed all my apps. Everything is gone. It's just that recorder. And I got these explosive booms. And it's been continuing ever since. And it's almost like the microphone has picked up double the input or something. And then it's with the mumbling in all the rooms. Mumbling, mumbling, mumbling. And you don't even get up and look anymore, the house. But it's just like, it sounds like somebody's talking constantly, and I'm getting just so much more. I mean, it's just clear, and it's loud, and it's booming, and it's almost like you talk about the multiverse, like the bubbles that are breaking. It's almost like these bubbles are enhanced, and you can hear them breaking, and the voices just come flying out of the end of these large explosions. And I got like 30 of them in one night that were just so, I mean, there they were, you know. And I don't interfere, talk, or say anything. I just hit record, 15 seconds, hit, stop, hit record again, and then, I just go through them and kind of mark them, and then I go back and listen to them, and I make sure if it doesn't sound right, I get rid of them. But there has been like a literal explosion. The atmosphere is different. The sound is different. The background, everything is different. It's just weird. It's like something is just not. Something is either clicking or it's been disturbed, and it could be the roof. Yeah.
Oh, comment, Shane?
Yeah, well, as far as like the recordings and stuff like that, I was just thinking when she was talking, when we were doing the investigation portion for the Haunted House Diaries book by William Hall, and we were over there, and I was, he wanted some of that for his book and everything, so when the recordings I got, and this is true for a lot of other active properties too, like the ones I'm talking about with the rivers and streams, the really active ones, so we would have the recording and it'd be quiet, and a lot of times it starts off like there'll be a ping, or a high pitched noise, and it's like something changes in the atmosphere, ping or a pop. It's either one or the other, and then the voices come through. It's so something changes in the environment or atmosphere, allowing this stuff to break through. Just like she said, and the same is with a lot of the poltergeist cases. A lot of times you'll hear a static snap in the house, and then activity will take place. It's the same thing with these voices that she's talking about. I experienced it with my recorders, and I use several different ones as well. But it's the same thing. So something changes, something crosses, and then boom, and these things start coming through.
Well, it's the thing too. No, go ahead, Don.
No, I was just going to say, you know me, I don't interact with anything. I refuse to. I did have 2 interactions that I couldn't help myself with, and if you have a moment, I'll tell you what happened. We were having a lot of noise here one night, banging, and, just the normal household stuff that we get here in this house at night when nobody's up or anything. And I finally sat in the chair in the corner, and I said, you know what, my name is Donna, and I live here. And I was doing just a couple of recordings, and on the second one, a man comes in and he goes, Donna, he goes, nice to meet you. So, my first thought was, possibly it's a seance in like the 1800s, and they're pulling me through from the future. You know what I mean? Or somebody somewhere else is so excited to get an EVP, and I'm it, and it's kind of weird. You delve into this, and then my dog, Shimmer, nobody knows my dog's name. We have a nickname for her. And I was getting this breathless young woman, her voice. And we rescued our dog from Oklahoma City, and she was only 3, I think, at the time. And we left her name with her and everything, and I kept getting this very young woman. And she'd come on and she'd go, she's a girl. And somebody would go, oh, because they interact with each other, wherever they are. And she kept it up, and she kept, oh, Shimmer, my Shimmer, my Shimmer. And she was taking these deep breaths like she couldn't breathe. And this went on for like 4 months. And one day I was on the back porch, and I just was standing there with my back against the well out there. And I said, I just want you to know. I said that we have Shimmer. I said we rescued her. She's safe. We love her. Everything is fine. There's no problem. And I said, someday she'll be returning to you as your dog, And it stopped. It just automatically stopped. And it went on for months. I didn't hear a word. And one day I went out and I said, I wonder whatever happened to you. I came back in. It was the same woman's voice. And she goes, it was the tumor. So, it's like you, and the way she was breathing. And she had this very soft young, and she was gasping. And I'm actually now, I can recognize voices when they come through. I don't know who they are. I've looked up more darned obituaries, Paul, and you have no idea.
Well, we're about the same vintage, so I look at a lot of them too.
Yeah, I know it, but I'll get a full name, like Admiral so-and-so, or, I get these weird things. My parachute failed. Well, obviously, you're talking to me on this. Obviously, your parachute failed. you know.
Yeah.
And my ex-son-in-law passed away December 1st. He was an alcoholic, and I was sitting here one night, and it came on, and it just said, it's Dale. He says, I'm dead. He says, I don't drink anymore. And that was it, you know. And it's weird. It's like their last thoughts, their first thoughts afterward, you know. One guy came on, he goes, I've been cremated. He goes, that's healthy, right? And I guess it is. I don't know, you know.
Well, that's the thing.
Yeah.
I mean, we got all kinds of quantum entanglements going on here. People sharing consciousness all over the multiverse. You know, concepts of death are very slippery. I don't think there is any such thing. And we could do another whole show on this, but I'm afraid we're going to have to move on. But Donna, thank you for calling in. Always amazing to hear what's going on over there, and we hope to get there soon. After all this stuff blows over.
We'll make it.
All right.
Yeah, when things blow over, we're here, hopefully.
Well, love to everybody. We're going on 16 years of working on the case.
Oh, I know it. Wow, huh?
Yeah, well, very good.
All righties. Well, we'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
Yes.
Very good.
Bye-bye.
All right.
Okay,
bye.
now, we don't want to neglect Rick number 2's question from Illinois about the meditation. And it's funny, Ben and I were talking about this sort of thing before we went on the air today.
Actually, yeah.
Yeah, and so Ben, do you want to address Rick's concerns there?
Oh, sure. You know, we were talking about this, you know, prior to, and you know, I was kind of mentioning that there's many different types of meditation. I think it's very what's the word? I think it's dangerous to assume all meditation is the same. So, you know, you have different styles. There's, you know, one that was very popular, which is called Kundalini meditation, which is about going to different planes or dimensions of existence. Then you have Zen meditation, which is really about emptying the mind, which is very different. And then you have various forms, you know, for lack of better words, from Eastern Christianity, which is all about, which is referred to as the prayer of the heart, which is very different, which is sort of meant to it's meant for self-betterment, really. Is kind of where the source of that, which is kind of, you know, focusing on the core of your being, which essentially is kind of what most meditation is, right? At the end of the day, really, it's kind of centering yourself in something somewhere. So, you know, having been relatively well versed in different forms of it, I can tell you, Rick, that from experience, there are you kind of have to figure out what you're trying to achieve, right? So that's kind of rule number one is, okay, well, if you're attempting to sort of work on, you know, psychological emotional, you know, post-traumatic stress disorder stuff, I would recommend don't do Kundalini type meditation where you are attempting to sort of leave your body. You know, it may seem involuntary, but there's sort of a part of you that's focusing on, okay, well, this is what meditation should be, which is sort of transcending, you know, the sort of reality you see around you, which can, you know, lead to things that are dangerous and terrifying. Whereas, you know, simple, you know, it may seem like, oh, well, you know, I do deep breathing, this is what I do, this is kind of what happens. You know, a lot of it is, as I said, very much based on what you bring to the experience and what you're trying to bring to it. So my first recommendation would be, you know, just very, very simple. Focus on your breathing. You know, don't close your eyes. Just focus on something in the room. You know, when we went to the Providence Zen Center for a while, you know, when I first learned about Zen meditation, they were like, don't close your eyes. You know, a wise monk once said, that's like lighting a wet match in a dark cave, because that just doesn't, you're not going to see, you're basically blinding yourself to reality as it is. And in this instance, you know, it's all about centering yourself where you are, right, and seeing what's there. So in this sense, focus on something in your room, whatever it may be, you know, whether it's the floor, a chair, something, you know, just keep it simple and just focus on breathing. And the mantra they taught us there was, you breathe in, clear mind, and exhale, don't know. And that is a very simple thing to focus on, because I think with different forms of meditation, especially with some of the more new agey things, they want you to kind of like, oh, well, you know, picture this, envision that, visualize this. And it's like, it's helpful sometimes. But in some cases, it can be very dangerous, because you do get to these instances where you could potentially, have these experiences that you've had that are terrifying, and they make you not want to do it anymore. But if you focus on a simple mantra and just focus on breathing and clear the mind and just focus on your muscles relaxing, it's a very grounded experience. And that's the thing that is most necessary. I was thinking about this, but while Shane was talking about it, people say, well, you got to ground yourself, but they never explain what it is.
Right.
They just say, well, you got to do it, and it's like, okay, well, what is it? And then when you ask, you're like, well, you just do it, and it's like that's not that's just kind of cyclical logic. In my opinion, grounding yourself in this instance would be just focusing on something in your room, and that's what you focus on. Some people will say, they sort of envision, sinking roots into the ground as if you're a tree. I think that a lot of this sort of envisioning stuff can, like I said, be very dangerous, and you have to really be careful of what you do. So in this instance, keep it simple and just breathe. Because there's so much noise and just so many distractions, and there's just always something going on and just something to distract you. But there is nothing more helpful to one's mental state than solitude. And there's a difference between isolation and solitude, I will say. There's a very, very big difference. Solitude sort of insinuates, in insightfulness into oneself, really a lot of self-reflection, whereas isolation sort of refers more to, sort of a nebulous state of sort of being like overly self-deprecative and just like very, very sort of depressed, kind of like, I can't remember what the word is for it, but essentially, you get kind of down in the dumps. But find solitude and silence, because there's nothing more helpful to the human spirit than just silence, in my opinion.
Yeah, and that's the scariest thing for most people today, silence. So I would just, I couldn't improve on what you said, Ben, except just to add that there's been a question for me always, where you meditate, and I addressed this in the book Turning Home. That, matter of fact, just a few weeks ago, I was at a case in Rhode Island, and the people were having issues with an elderly mother who was sleeping in a certain part of a room, and it was definitely energy coming up out of the ground in the basement and outside and right up in the corner where she was sleeping. And I prescribed a few other things, and I'm going to be contacting them this week. Should things not have improved, I'm going to advise them just to move the bed to a different part of the room. So where you sleep, where you live, where you meditate is a relevant question.
There is something to feng shui.
That
is
there
very
is.
much
Energy flow, yeah. And for example, things can happen in meditation that can be unexpected, but I think the best thing that we could tell Rick is just to keep it simple, as Ben said. Shane, anything further to add?
No, that's perfect. That is perfect.
Okay. Well, you can't expect anything better than perfect, I guess. So we, I think, have time. Maybe one more quick question here.
Shortest ones are always the longest.
Yeah, I know. But for those who... Okay, here's a really short one at the end from Peggy Ray in Seattle.
What is your favorite color?
Yeah. Actually, let's... This was the very last one there.
Peggy Ray writes to us... I have read Lovecraft's collected letters, and he obviously detested religion. You, on the other hand, are obviously believers. If you were talking to Lovecraft about God, what would you say?
Oh, my gosh. That's not 25 words or less.
I told you, the shortest ones...
Well, I don't know. I mean, I would ask... Lovecraft was a distant cousin of ours, and my father... According to my mother, had corresponded with him, although she threw away all the letters. I almost divorced her for that.
Her trademark.
We're talking about H.P. Lovecraft, the writer of horror and fantasy from Providence, Rhode Island, who was known as the Edgar Allan Poe of the 20th century. Anyway, 1890 to 1937. I would say, okay, Howard, what God don't you believe in? Because I would always say that you have to, with intelligence and discernment, decide what not to believe in, just as with intelligence and discernment, you should decide what to believe in. I think that they both have to be intelligent decisions, all right? You don't just reject stuff out of hand. And we encounter that kind of thing all the time in paranormal work.
Yeah.
Well, I don't believe in this. I think, well, why not? Or how do you know that you don't have information that might change your opinion? So I would say, what God don't you believe in? And most likely he describes some daffy thing that I don't believe in either. I've had a lot of dealings with people who claim to be atheists, including 4 of them on their deathbeds. They were not a pretty picture, because as death goes, because they were all terrified, and every single one of them asked me about God on their deathbeds. And I said, look, just don't worry, just be grateful. Say thank you. And then you'll never have to be afraid. I mean, that's... And Father Alexander Schmemann, one of my teachers, a great Orthodox thinker, said that anyone capable of gratitude is capable of salvation. It's very, very, very simple. So, and I think Lovecraft and I might have had... I wish I'd been able to have conversations with him on that. So I don't know. That's all I can say about it.
That's fair. Yeah.
Yeah, and again, believers don't. It doesn't mean you believe. Doesn't mean I still believe what I was taught in the seminary, in the same way, or even at all. In some cases, it doesn't mean that you go to church and believe everything that's said by the priest or the minister or the imam or whoever, the rabbi. It means that you make an intelligent decision to respond to the obvious presence of the Godhead. And I with all respect, I have never... There have been a number of great thinkers, including Stephen Hawking, who I believe was more of an agnostic. I mean, I can respect that. But people who are supposed to be intelligent and miss the whole point of the universe by being atheists, I can't respect that. How intelligent is that? I mean, I think there's a lack of intelligence. But that's me. I don't know. Anybody else have anything to say on that?
What about you, Shane?
Yeah, before we go to our announcements.
No, I pretty much agree with that. So I'm just going to repeat what you said pretty much. So.
All right. Okay. Well, in that case, on that divine aspect of the question here, we'll go to our announcements.
Yes.
And Ben, take us away.
Sure thing. So as we've been announcing on recent shows, the 2020 Exeter UFO Festival on Labor Day weekend has been canceled, unfortunately. But the 55th anniversary of the incident at Exeter will not go unsung on this show. So on September 6th, the day we would have broadcasted from the historic Exeter Town Hall with a panel of speakers and a live audience in a row, we will offer a rebroadcast of last year's panel show from there. And on the panel were Kathleen Martin, Peter Robbins, Mac Maloney, Mike Stevens, and many other luminaries in the UFO field.
The following week, September 13th, we'll bring you a very special guest, retired FBI agent Clinton Rand, who, as a Hampton, New Hampshire police sergeant in September of 1965, was on duty at the police department desk during the incident at Exeter. Took in the whole thing. That involved UFO encounters by several of his officers.
And we have high hopes that we can be back at the Greater New England UFO Conference in Leominster, Massachusetts on Columbus Day weekend. My dad is scheduled to be the keynote speaker to mark his 50-year work anniversary in paranormal research. So early congratulations. There are plans for an online conference if it cannot be held at the usual physical venue. And you can look for Shane there as well.
Now, we have no final word on this next event yet, but rumor has it that another UFO event that takes place in October will indeed do so this year in the vicinity of Danbury, Connecticut. So stay tuned, literally, on that one. I think we're coming down to the wire here, Ben.
Yes.
Just quickly, Shane, what's going on with you?
Not much, not much at all.
Well, we're doing this, so that's something.
Yeah. So, yeah, I've just been doing a lot of shows here and there. You can, Google me, YouTube me, and doing a lot of shows, not a lot of conferences, as nobody is. And I don't really have any scheduled that I'm aware of, except for maybe Connecticut, but I haven't got the official go for that one. But yeah, that's about it. A lot of shows.
And TrueGhost.com, right?
Yep, TrueGhost.com.
Okay, so Ben, what's going on next week?
So next week we will bring you a show on July 26th. We'll bring you the renowned British UFO researcher and author and blogger Nigel Watson to take us through the history of UFO investigation, which, weirdly, I don't think we've ever actually done.
I think we've touched on it. We've never done a whole show on it. I think it's a cool subject, though.
Yeah.
So anyway, we'll leave you today with a thought from person or persons unknown. When the world says give up, hope says give it one more try. So, I'm Paul Eno.
I'm Ben Eno, and we still have a few more seconds here. So,
all right, well, there we go.
So feel free to visit our show website if you want to check out any of our podcasts. We are on all podcast platforms. Feel free to give us any sort of rating, subscription, and Shane, take it away.
I'm Shane Stairway. Thanks for joining us on our great cosmic journey. Everyone, be safe, and we'll see you next time on Behind the Paranormal.
Return to this radio frequency 167 hours from now.